Hello and welcome to Crushing Comics. I am your host Peter, and I'm here with something all new, all different, and potentially ill-advised. It just so happens that last week I read all of the in-continuity Marvel titles for the week. That was the titles that were released on Wednesday, August 22nd. So I wanted to try to talk about everything from the week in a way that would be really accessible. Except for that's a number of titles. And if I talked about them all at the length that I used to do in my Week in X, that would be a really long video, which I'm not opposed to. But I don't know if you all are interested in. So I'm going to try something I am thinking of calling Marvel in a Minute. Just a little bit review, a little bit recap, a little bit will you like it, but not just let me read this issue for you in 1 minute each. This could be crazy. I haven't rehearsed, I haven't like sat in front of a clock or anything and gone for a minute, so we're just gonna see if I can make it work. The first comic book up this week is Amazing Spider-Man #4. Are you ready? I'm gonna start my clock. Amazing Spider-Man #4 is by the creative team of Nick Spencer, Ryan Ottley, Cliff Rathburn, and Laura Martin. Nick Spencer took over Amazing Spider-Man after Dan Slott's historic run ended with 801. Nick Spencer's version of Spider-Man, I'm not going to call it all ages, but it's just a much lighter affair. It's not any big plots by a Green Goblin or a Red Goblin or a Doc Ock, so far anyway. It's really just Spider-Man being bad at his job and bad at his relationships, and but also having an encounter with a duplicate Spider-Man as a result of the same machine that created the original Spider that bit him to give him his Spider-Man powers. So it's a very like lightweight, it almost kind of feels like an animated series sort of story, and this particular issue, I haven't been a terrific fan of it because I love that deeper Spider-Man, but this particular issue finds a little bit of fun in it, and by showing that like there is a fun and callous side to Spider-Man as much as there is a responsible side, and when you separate the two, you get some very interesting results, but it could mean, what could it mean for the Peter Spider-Man to not feel responsible? Oh my god, that's a minute. This is really, really hard. Our next issue is Avengers Wakanda Forever. Ready? Avengers Wakanda Forever is written by Nnedi Okorafor, artist Oleg Ukunev, colorist Erica Arciniega, and letterer Joe Sabino. Oh my gosh, that took me 10 seconds. This is the third of 3 one-shots that effectively are just a 3-issue miniseries that sees the Dora Milaje that we know and love from the movie teaming up, a movie of Black Panther, teaming up with first Spider-Man and then the X-Men, although really mostly just Storm, and now finally the Avengers. The whole point of the series is to wrap up the plot thread of Nakia, who we saw and loved in the movie, but who has really been a villain named Malice in the comic books for a really long time, basically ever since she was first introduced by Christopher Priest back in that 1998 series. This is not really an full Avengers appearance. Like, they're there, but it's really mostly they're there for Black Panther to appear alongside of Storm from the previous issue, and Spider-Man's really not a factor. I didn't really love the art. It kind of ends up in a hurry, and it's just not highly recommended. The series has been okay. It's been fun to see the Dora Milaje, but I really feel like we could do more with them. Gosh, that's it. These minutes go really fast. I will say that this has to happen after Avengers 1 through 6 by Jason Aaron because it features the team assembled in a way that had not existed prior to those 6 issues. Speaking of which, next up is Avengers #6. Avengers #6 is written by Jason Aaron with art from Ed McGuinness and Paco Medina, inkers Mark Morales and Juan Velasco, color artist David Curiel, who I love, and letters by Corey Petit. I guess that's always going to take 10 seconds. So this is the wrap-up of the first arc of Avengers. It kind of follows up on what Jason Aaron introduced in his Marvel Legacy one-shot, which was out almost a whole year ago at this point, so you'd be forgiven if you forgot about it. But the thing you need to know is a big Celestial, the first host, was unburied there, and now there's a bunch of other Celestials and bugs in the earth, and it's all happening. I feel like this was a lot of explanation for a final issue, and Aaron clearly is setting up like a big kind of multiversal and history of Earth sort of thing with the Celestials, but it just made this issue a lot of talk, and then the Deus Ex Machina that resolved it, I thought was super, super lame and not in character for any of the Avengers. In fact, none of them really felt in character to me here, and the art in this issue was really, really busy. I kind of was just lost. I am not a huge fan of this first arc of Avengers. I don't think Aaron is my fave. On team books, I'm willing to give him another arc, and we're almost past a minute. Jeez. Maybe it should be Marvel in a minute and a half. Next up is Black Panther #3. Black Panther #3 is written by Ta-Nehisi Coates with art from Daniel Cunha, letters from Joe Sabino, and that's it. So wow, I'm stunned by this. Stunned. So this is a brand new Black Panther title. It kind of follows up on Ta-Nehisi Coates' run previously, but not really, because it's in this like crazy far-flung, or maybe far past, space battle future that is like a lot like the raid on the Death Star at the end of A New Hope, and it's utterly gorgeous, the best art I've ever seen from Daniel Acuna, and it's so weird. It's like, why is T'Challa there? Why is Nakia there and M'Baku? Why are they in space? Why is there a Wakandan space empire? There's so many questions, but it's like, doesn't super matter because it's so good, so compelling. Aaron is writing some of the best space battles and rebel intrigue I've ever read in the comic book. It feels like an all-black intergalactic cast of a Star Wars comic book, and I cannot get enough of it. I said holy numbers of times to splash pages in this issue, and that is a minute. I don't know where it's going, but I am totally into it. Major, major thumbs up from this one. If you see me wildly gesticulating, it's just my phone that I'm keeping time on. Next up, we have Daredevil 607. Daredevil 607 is written by Charles Soule with art from one of my favorites, Phil Noto, and letters from Clayton Cowles. This is the first arc that kind of comes after that whole big Kingpin is the mayor thing, and it plays with a old trope of Daredevil, which is that he pretended to have a twin brother, Mike Murdock, who could kind of like get him out of a pinch and also pretend to be Daredevil. Except for here, it seems like Mike Murdock might be real, which is crazy because it was always just like Matt Murdock with a hat on. And the way that he is made real, it's very, very clever, and it makes for a lot of really fun action in this issue and great illustration from Noto. Soule is really bringing to bear a lot of the things he's had his fingers dipped in. There's two Inhuman characters being used really well in this arc. There's also Cypher from X-Men, who Soule used in his Weapon Lost Wolverine Hunt for Wolverine series, and it's just fun. It's nice to have a little bit of a lighter touch after the heavy stuff that came before, but the Soule on Daredevil is really just really working for me. I think it's brilliant. I think it upholds that critical hit that Daredevil has been on and off, but mostly on since 1998. That is a minute. Thumbs up on this one, but I think you gotta just get on Marvel Unlimited and like start reading Daredevil from the beginning of Soule. It doesn't really heat up for me until the teens, but it's totally worth it to read from the beginning because he pulls together so many strings, and the arc that we just came off of was pretty wild. So this is like a nice, fun, lighter arc, and if you just read this arc on its own, you're gonna be like, oh, it's so lightweight, but it's satisfyingly lightweight. Next up, we have Hunt for Wolverine, Mystery in Madripoor #4. I'm catching this series of series on the tail end, so this will be the only one of the 4-issue miniseries of Hunt for Wolverine I get to talk about in this format. Here we go. So Hunt for Wolverine, Mystery in Madripoor, written by Jim Zub, art by Tony Silas and Leonard Kirk, color from Felipe Sobrerio and Andrew Crossley, and letters by Joe Sabino. So this is the one of the 4 Hunt for Wolverine series that actually like means something, maybe because the other 3 series were so tertiary to Wolverine and the people who really hung out with him the most, but because this is the like pretty much the full cast of X-Men women that hung out with Wolverine, things can happen and develop, and it feels like they're really going to be allowed to continue to affect the characters in the X-Men titles. I don't know if I can really recommend the series on the whole. Tony Silas did a great job of really trying to nail the tone of the story, but it's kind of like angular, almost like Cartoon Network influenced art, do I get extra time for that? Is not a great fit for this story, and I feel like we could have had so much more, as shown by the fact that they got Leonard Kirk to illustrate the really key dream sequence here that turns out to be reality. Major changes for Psylocke if you're a Psylocke fan, so I don't know, minute is up, if I can seriously recommend this. It's one of those things that like, the revelation that comes from it is, you only need to know what the revelation is. It's not really important to have read it, but Jim Zub writes such good X-Women, and I really enjoyed him on this. I'm really cheating with these little extra comments at the end. We're gonna have to really crack down on that. Next up is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, #34. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is written by Brandon Montclair, art by Natasha Bustos, colorist Tamara Bonvillain, and letterer Travis Lanham. I have a beef with this series that's been my beef with it since day one. I don't think it's a good comic for kids. And I think that this issue, I know that some kids like it, I understand that, but this issue, it was exactly why. So we have this young girl scientist who's supposed to be the smartest girl in the world, but all she really does is like act nasty to other people and super entitled, and then the comic perpetuates horrible stereotypes for kids. Like, this one is kind of about how, like, boys are mean because they really like you, which is actually just how we socialize our young girls to stalking. I'm totally not into it. I don't think it's charming. I think it's beautiful. Natasha Bustos is an amazing illustrator, and I know some kids really like it, and I know that it's representation on the page, and it's not for me, but not only is it not for me, but I would not read it to my kid in the way that I read Wasp to her with only, and that's a minute, really gentle edits to Wasp. I don't find this story charming in the slightest. It's an absolute skip. I think the main draw is how cool the art looks, and I just don't think it's gotten their own story ever. Yeah, not a fan. Okay, what's next? Mr. and Mrs. X #2, aka Gambit and Rogue. Ready? Mr. and Mrs. X #2 is written by Kelly Thompson with art by Oscar Bazaldua. Colors by Frank Darmada and letters by Travis Lanham. This comic, I loved it. I loved it. The only reason you really might dislike it is if you don't really like jokey X-Men comics. It's quite funny and it might not be for you. And it's got a pretty long Deadpool feature in it. But I feel like the Deadpool feature, although it is egregious to have him in issue #2 as a guest star, really respects the fact that he and Rogue had a real friendship and bordering on relationship in Uncanny Avengers. And he also just does not like Gambit, which we saw in his Gambit miniseries. So Thompson is really following up on 2 recent hunks of continuity in a really pleasing way here. And for 90s Excalibur fans, it has TechNet. I freaked out when TechNet appeared on this page. I love them so much from Alan Davis Excalibur. I could not be happier. This was really, really close to a perfect comic issue for me. It made me so happy. I highly recommend it. And I came in at 59 seconds because that's how excited I am to talk about Kelly Thompson comics. There's really nothing else to say. It's Gambit and Rogue's honeymoon, but it's going all wrong. Next up, we have Old Man Logan #46. There was also an issue of Old Man Hawkeye out this week, but I'm only doing this recap for titles that are in Marvel's current present-day continuity because I'm just not as interested in the other titles, so I'm not going to pay to keep up with them. I will catch them on Marvel Unlimited sometime later. So this is Old Man Logan #46. Old Man Logan #46 was written by Ed Brazon with art from Damien Cosero, color from Carlos Lopez, and letters from Corey Petit. You know, I've been hard on Old Man Logan, not because I'm just a curmudgeonly old man myself, but because I don't really understand what is he for. Like, why is he here? What are these stories supposed to be giving us? And now that he's dying, not that I'm just happy that he's dying, or at least he's severely injured and not recovering very quickly, I just feel like there's a little bit more to the stories because we're getting this Wolverine who's past his bluster phase and his coming to terms with his death, and we're getting those interactions with different characters, and I just have really been enjoying the past few issues. The previous Bullseye arc was great, and gosh, I have 20 seconds left and I haven't even talked about this issue. It's, he goes to Canada, there's some bad things going down, and Alpha Flight calls him in for some advice. It's a really fun version of the classic Alpha Flight that we all know. He has great conversations with Puck. There's some fun moments with Shaman and Snowbird. If you like classic Alpha Flight and you enjoy Wolverine, I really think you'll get a kick out of this. It continues into the next issue. One of my friends was saying, like, can't we just have a dang Alpha Flight comic? They guest star everywhere, right? They're like it's supporting characters in Captain Marvel. We're starting to see them more on the ground. They were a little bit in Charles Soule's Weapon Lost, but I like them that way. They don't really do a great job of sustaining their own comic book. It can only last for so long. I'd rather just see them as these utility players, much like Abigail Brand, that show up everywhere and are just fun. Next up, we've got Sentry #3. Sentry #3 was written by Jeff Lemire with art from Kim Jacinto and Joshua Cassera, color art from Rain Barreto, and letters from Travis Lanham. So I was one of the people who, when this got announced, was like, WTF, why does there need to be a Sentry series? Like, I get that he just came back and Donny Cates is Doctor Strange, but like, what is there to say? I think he's just been done. Lemire, who I do not always like, really found a fun angle into Sentry. There's a reason he's back. There's a reason we have not seen him be superheroing around. And it's all very quickly going south, as it would, because why, if you were a villain obsessed with ending the world or with a more personal grudge, why would you not want to try to get the Void released again and cause some trouble for Sentry? That said, the first 2 issues of this, really, really fun, really enjoyed them. This issue is a very much like, what have the villains been doing all this time? And it just was a little bit much for me. I wish it had cut away a little bit more. I wish there just had been more fun, more time with Bob Reynolds as Sentry. So I think in whole and trade, it's the end of my minute, this is probably going to read well in trade. But as an individual chapter, I can't say, like, run out of buy right now. Now we have the Life of Captain Marvel #2. Life of Captain Marvel #2 is written by Margaret Stoll and has a present-day sequence which is penciled by Carlos Pacheco, inked by Rafael Fonteras, and colored by Marcio Menez. But in the past, it's got art by Marguerite Sauvage, and it's lettered by Clayton Cowles. Okay. I'm over the moon about this series. I love Captain Marvel. I've loved her ever since she was Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers. I'm in for all of it. And I follow all of her titles very closely. I love Kelly Sue DeConnick on her. I like Margaret Stoll's voice for her a lot, but I don't know that we've had a worthwhile story where it really feels like we're getting Carol's agency in the way that it feels like she would react. It feels like it's a lot of her being pushed and pulled by a lot of other plots that don't feel very Captain Marvel. That is not the case in this series. This is a quintessential Captain Marvel story where we get the full force of her personality. It's not an action story, it's a personal story. Maybe that's what Margaret Stoll has been better at all along. Maybe she's not going to write great action comics. I don't know, but this feels so authentically Captain Marvel to me, and if you love her like I do, that's time. You really should pick it up. Who knows where it's going? It's a little weird in continuity because it clearly happens after the original Avengers, or the first 6 issues of Avengers that just ended. But in the first issue it says 9 months went by, which puts it like way out in front of all of other Marvel continuity. So maybe there'll be some time shenanigans happening. Like who knows how it's going to get resolved. But it's very personal. It's not action. It's gorgeous, and I love it. Dear sweet Lord, there's a lot of these left. This is Punisher #1. Ready? Punisher #1 was written by Matt Rosenberg with art from Simon Kudranski and colors by Antonio Fabela, letters from Corey Petit. I am all over this Punisher relaunch. Let me tell you, I don't love mob stories. I'm just not. I know I'm Italian and I'm from Philly. It just doesn't ring for me. And I know there's a lot of great Punisher bleeding up, blowing up the mob stories, and they just don't really get me. I loved what Rosenberg did on the Marvel Legacy run of Punisher where he's in the War Machine armor. And it's like, well, wouldn't the Punisher think bigger than just mob bosses if he was in the War Machine armor? Especially because right now he has to atone for some really effed up S that he did in Secret Empire. So this actually continues that thread. He doesn't have the War Machine armor anymore, but he's like, what if I just continue thinking big? And I know some Punisher fans are like, I don't want to see Punisher fight Baron Zemo. I don't want to see Punisher fight Mandarin. But I tend to like when we bring in something, an element a little bit super into the world of Punisher. It makes me thrilled to see him extend himself that way, because him bopping monsters is like Mario just jumping on the little Goomba mushrooms. It's time. This, not only that, but this was a very, very attractive issue. I'm a fan of this artist, Simon Kudranski. I think he's the artist from Aftershocks Black Eyed Kids. I will Chiron that if I was wrong, but I think he is the artist from that. Next up, we have Venom #5. Venom #5, written by Donny Cates, penciled by Ryan Stegman, inks from J.P. Meyer, colors from Frank Martin. Okay, Donny Cates is somebody who puts all of the ideas in a blender and comes out with crazy stuff. I've loved all of his indie work. At Marvel, I sometimes feel like he goes a little too far on the crazy train, and I don't always go there. Venom is kind of like that, where we've got this Eddie Brock Venom, he's back in the suit, but from the first issue, Cates is really, really doing just wild, unexpected things with the history of the symbiote, and some of you are not going to like it, especially when we get to this issue. There's dragons, there's ancient history, there's other planets. It's like all of the Venom stuff we've got and even more, and it just might be a little bit much for you. It was much for me. But now that we're 5 issues into it and I see the direction that Cates is going in and all of the little plot threads he's picked up from other books to pull into Venom, I'm there, okay? Yes, did I love Flash Thompson Venom? Yes. Did I want just a more normal Eddie Brock Venom series? Yes. But if we're gonna go crazy, let's go all the way crazy, and I do think that is the thing that Donny Cates is doing. I mean, that's my minute. I can't say anything else. I have to add a little tag onto that Venom. I know I'm way over my minute, but this issue sets up what the longer term plot is. It's kind of a game of keep away in a way, but with some very interesting implications for the villain and for Venom. So that's why I feel like this is where it's come all together and we can see where the series is going, and clearly that Cates has a plan. So next up is a West Coast Avengers #1, a book I am excited for a variety of reasons. Why? Because I love West Coast Avengers, and I love West Coast Avengers #1 writer Kelly Thompson, artist Stefano Caselli, color artist Trina Farrell, letterer Joe Caramagna. This is a dream team of creators, and this book is really, really fun. I'll get the criticism out of the way first. Kelly Thompson clearly loves Kate Bishop, and she's having trouble tearing herself away from Kate Bishop. It feels like we're always like waiting to get back into a scene with Kate Bishop, and even when she's not in the scene, it feels like the other characters are always talking about her, although that is kind of the point of this issue. This is a lot sillier than her Hawkeye. It's a lot funnier in a slapsticky way than her Hawkeye, but it still feels like of a piece to her Hawkeye. And Thompson clearly has picked these other characters for the right reason. We already know she knows how to write Clint, but her Gwenpool is funny, her Quentin Quire is funny, her America is purposefully stoic. There's a great reveal at the end. It's just an all-around feel-good, super fun issue. Anybody who was nervous about the whole plot that leaked, that it was somewhat having to do with a reality show and thought we were going back to like that pre-Civil War New Warriors, it's a very different kind of reality show plot to that, and I would not worry about it. Highly recommended. My minute is up. If you're a fan of any of those characters, or of Kelly Thompson, or of Stefano Caselli, just high quality, super fun comic books. Next up, we have X-Men Gold number 34. X-Men Gold 34 is written by Mark Guggenheim with art from Michelle Bandini, color from Eric Arciniega, and letters from Corey Petit. You have heard me, if you've watched this channel before, not love X-Men Gold. Except for I'm actually really enjoying it from issue 30, which was the wedding, forward. I think if you've been like waiting to check out X-Men, there's a lot of other things you could be reading, but if you want to get a little bit grounded before we go into the big Uncanny X-Men relaunch, you could do worse than reading Gold. It's got a fun cast. But here's the thing. I love Storm. I'm not a Storm historian. I don't know every Storm story. I get a little confused about the timeline of her parents and when they died and when she went to America and went back to Africa. And this comic seems like it's aimed at that kind of person, but that the people who know it really well are probably going to roll their eyes, and I've seen some eye rolling. Personally, I thought it was just like a fun solo Storm story where she has the ability to get some stuff done. I love the artist, Michelle Bandini. She killed in Captain Marvel. She's one of the best interior artists at Marvel right now, and this book looks great. It doesn't have anybody else in it. It's a Storm issue. If you don't like Storm, don't pick it up. If you don't want to see Storm having an adventure in Africa and related to her original tribal home, don't pick it up. Our final book of the week is X-Men Red, number 7. How are we already 7 issues into this title? Ready? X-Men Red number 7 is written by Tom Taylor with art from Carmen Canero, color art from Rain Barreto, and letters from Corey Petit. This has been the moment I've been waiting for in X-Men Red. It all came together for me. This issue was a stunner. I'm in. I'm loving it. My first reaction to this title was like, more with the Hated and Feared. We got Jean Grey back, and we're just doing right into the Hated and Feared stuff that's like happening at the same time, almost verbatim the same plot in Gold right now. But Taylor has identified something unique about Jean Grey and her ability to inspire a team, and there's a weird slapdash team of Nightcrawler, Namor, X-23, Honey Badger. It's actually really working. This issue has stunning action. It has amazing art. Carmen Canero is amazing. Way, way better in my opinion than the art had been previously. And this was just like an F yeah kind of cheering, the X-Men are great moment. It ends on a stellar panel. I could not have enjoyed it anymore. It was perfect X-Men comic books for me. And anytime there's perfect X-Men comic books, you have my full endorsement. Amazing job to this creative team. So I made it through all the Marvel books of the week. Oh my gosh, this is hard. So here's a few things. First, I want to tell you what's the buy of the week if you're just going to buy an issue this week, and then what is the catch up to this comic of the week if you really want to catch up. The buy of the week, I might have to say Black Panther. It is so thrilling, and this issue was like beyond gorgeous. It just dropped my jaw every time, and there are some really attractive comic books in this bunch this week. Life of Captain Marvel is beautiful. The X-Men Red is beautiful. West Coast Avengers is beautiful. Venom is beautiful. Punisher is beautiful. Like, these are good-looking comics. I picked a great week to get started, which is why I started this week. So if you're just going to get an issue, get Black Panther. If you are going to catch up on a comic of these comic books, I think I would either say X-Men Red, because this is where it really starts paying off and it was satisfying and it contextualizes it all so far. Or if you've got Marvel Unlimited or want to pick up a few trades, I think Matt Rosenberg's Punisher is just a blast of fun. And if you're not somebody who needs Punisher to just be murdering mobsters, it is so damn satisfying. This has been my first Marvel in a minute. I need some feedback from you to know if I need to keep doing it. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of voice. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of everything. It's just resource intensive, and yet I love it. If you watch this thing and you've seen all the way to here, I need you to like, I need you to comment, I need you to subscribe. I come from the world of business analytics. I measure the success of these things based on the kind of feedback that I get. Also, if I'm doing something dumb, if the minute format's not working, if it's anything else you want to know or want to say it, because I love having conversations with the folks that are commenting on this channel. It's one of the reasons I'm back and doing videos. It's one of the reasons I love this channel. So thank you so much for tuning into Crushing Comics and the first ever Marvel in a Minute.